Top Gun has turned out to be one of the finest 4K discs I've seen so far, and really it has no business being quite as good as it is. So with that in mind, let's find out why. Many will consider Top Gun to be director Tony Scott's finest film, and although I've never enjoyed it as much as I have on this HDR 4K disc, I'm not so sure. I think his best film might just be Deja Vu, starring Denzel Washington. This is a fine time-travelling murder mystery, which I think probably only Tony Scott could do. And then there's another classic that he made, possibly the finest submarine film ever created. Crimson Tide, Denzel Washington again and Gene Hackman. That really is a fantastic movie that, if you haven't seen, well worth a punt. Ridley Scott said of his brother something like, "I think his movies are among the finest popcorn movies ever made," and I think that's a really good summary. It's just such a shame that he wasn't around to make the sequel to Top Gun Maverick, which I'm really looking forward to now, having enjoyed this more than I've ever enjoyed it before. So just why is Top Gun so good? Well, the early 1980s were a time when Kodak were improving their film stocks markedly. Ever finer grain structures resulted in sharper images, and as I have to say, I used to go to the Empire to see films, and the colour and the sharpness on the films they were putting on screen was not something I think I've seen surpassed since. It just was a great time for movies. Top Gun was filmed in a process called Super 35. Now this is not a Super 35 film, but the leader of this has a perfect example of what I'm talking about, if you can see down that. We'll try and get a shot of that. That is more or less the Super 35 frame. It's around 3 sprockets high and goes from edge to edge of the sprockets. Now normally alongside the sprockets on one side you would have twin stereo optical sound stripes, but Super 35 doesn't have that, so it maximises the area on the 35mm film, but it's not as advantageous as doing a full frame 2x squeeze anamorphic film, which would have produced even better imagery. But that wasn't really an option for Top Gun, because they wanted to put the cameras in the fighter jets, and the G-forces with some of the manoeuvres those pilots were doing would have meant that the anamorphic lenses added weight and bulk to the cameras. Now this is an anamorphic lens I use with 35, 8mm and 16mm. It's not really a 35mm lens, but the weight of that is quite substantial anyway. This is a Kowa 2x anamorphic squeeze, which was considered the best for Super 8 use. And if you can look down that, I might go a bit screwy through there. But this would have meant there was the possibility of it shifting on the camera and the films being wasted and trips up in the jets being wasted. And of course there wasn't much space in the cockpits either, so the cameras really had to be as small as possible. This was long before the days of action cameras and having tiny little electronic video cameras that you could fit in the smallest spaces. And yet those filming sequences they got, where you see Tom Cruise and the rest of them, the cast actually in the cockpits, they really did go up and get a lot of those shots. And when you see the other jets flying in formation, they really were up there in the sky. They weren't flying the plane, unlike the later Mission Impossible Fallout, where Tom Cruise is actually flying the helicopter, operating the camera and acting. He wasn't flying the jet. I dare say he would have liked to have done, but the Navy probably didn't want him to. Can't really understand why. So despite the Super 35 process being used for this film, there were still 70mm blow-ups for premiere screenings in major cities around the world. And I remember the Empire Leicester Square having this film on for must have been a year. So certainly for the opening few weeks they would have had a 70mm print for the screenings. But I think when it moved out of the enormous Empire 1, which was always my favourite cinema, it moved to Empire 2, Empire 3, which were increasingly smaller, and Empire 3 is more like a cupboard really than a cinema. But That's the way things are going, isn't it? They must have had 35mm for those smaller studios. I don't think they've got 70mm projectors sitting in those booths. So, but it was very interesting that the image on Top Gun on 35mm was considered good enough for 70mm. And looking at this disc, I can see it would have worked. And that's possibly another contributing factor as to how we've got this exceptional image quality on our new 4K discs. The sound on Top Gun was always great. Originally it was Dolby Stereo, as on the PAL Laserdisc here. It's called Pro Logic for the home market. But it's been reworked again now, so I think the DVDs, they may have even done DTS for the previous Blu-ray, but it's been Dolby Digital 5.1, I'm sure. It's now been reworked again, and it's Dolby Atmos, and what will please many enthusiasts out there is that it's Dolby Atmos on the Blu-ray as well as on the 4K disc. And don't worry, if you haven't got any of these surround sound systems, you'll find that Top Gun sounds good on it, on anything, even if you're just running it through a television. Be warned though, you'll feel like you want to turn it up louder and louder to get the atmosphere of the jets. So be prepared to blow your speakers out, that's all I can say. The bigger the screen, the better this film looks. It's just one of those that's been filmed so well, and that was a trait of Tony Scott, just like his brother. He could get those really arty shots, but you'll find just about every shot in this of the aircraft, the stars, whether outside, you're looking into the sun to get those really standout figures, planes, and the shadows, the light. Just a Tony Scott perfect film in that regard. I think his brother must have been proud of him. Now, I think I've only seen one better 4K disc than Top Gun, and those of you who have seen my 2001 A Space Odyssey review won't be surprised to learn that it's Murder on the Orient Express, Kenneth Branagh's classic. Anyone hasn't yet seen this 4K disc and has got the facilities, I suggest you drop what you're doing right now and go out and buy a copy, because this is the best I've seen, and markedly better than 2001, which many people consider to be the best. Well, there's a bit of a surprise, because I've done direct comparisons of Murder on the Orient Express, 2001 and Top Gun, and Jaws actually, which is another great release that I've reviewed before. But Top Gun is now number 2 in the hierarchy, and I don't think you can really give it much more credit than that, or praise than that. So this really is well worth any 4K disc collector going out and purchasing. And there's something else worth noting. I'm planning a video at the moment which is going to be 4K versus 2K, because much of the reviews as I've been going through, I've been realising that some films really don't look quite as good as they should. That's not unusual with film and video. Certainly with Super 8, we'd find that actually one print of a Super 8 release would look vastly different to another, depending on the print run. Although that doesn't happen with video, obviously, because it's all coming from the original master, and particularly digital, it's all the same. But you'll find that one release will look different to another release, and sometimes they really shouldn't. That's all down to the mastering and the source material. So I'm planning this video, and I've also asked a couple of other Johns. There's going to be 3 of us Johns doing this, which is quite funny. At least I've asked them anyway. That's John Ellsworth of Project Ellsworth in New Jersey in America. He's got a very amusing way of presenting his reviews and unboxings, and even having lunch, which I find surprisingly interesting. But it's all these little looks he gives the cameras. He doesn't try to be funny, he just is. You know, he's just got a great personality. I'm asking him to produce a similar video to what I've got planned. He's not got so into the 4K versus 2K as I have yet, but I'm working on him. And another is John Perry of Mondo Chelloveck Movies, and he's also a movie enthusiast, very into his 4K movies. And we contacted each other, and I suggested that he start looking at some of his 4Ks and comparing them to the Blu-rays. And he's doing that, and so far he's found largely the same things that I have. And it should be an interesting little topic. So if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, maybe it's time to click that button and ring that bell so you get notified of when we finally get these videos up. And if the other chaps do them, I'll put the links in the description below, so that we can all conspire to get the information out there, and maybe some other people would join in and also do their own reviews of what they think the considerations are and how well things compare. Another video it looks like I'm going to do is thanks to being tagged by John Ellsworth of Project Ellsworth. Thanks, John. He got tagged to do a YouTube video where he had to answer 13 specific questions. So I've been given those 13 specific questions, and I've got to find ways of avoiding giving genuine answers. But anyway, that's coming soon, so that's another one to look out for. That's the end of this video, so if you liked it, please give it a thumbs up, and perhaps consider subscribing so I'll be encouraged to produce similar content to this in the future. Until the next time, purchase that copy of Top Gun. Thank you for watching, and bye-bye for now.